Welcome to the Multifamily 5, where industry experts provide raw information about how they're achieving success in the current market conditions. And now, your host, Dallas-based real estate broker, Mark Allen.
And welcome to the Multifamily 5. It's your host, Mark Allen, and today I'm excited to have Warren Craythorne. Warren, how's it going?
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me, buddy. Really appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity to be able to have this conversation.
Yeah, so Warren and I met through a friend, and he is the founder of Conduct Connect and has a history in fiber cable and in the broadband industry, I think in South Africa. So with that, Warren, why don't we just jump into what's your story, what's your background, how'd you get started, and then, what brought you to the U.S.?
Okay, well, I've been doing telecommunications infrastructure for a good part of 22 years. So I've been doing this in South Africa for many years. And, so for us, we were forced to move over to fiber very quickly. So South Africa had to adopt fiber optic infrastructure pretty early on, just due to, the economy here and what was happening with our legacy infrastructure, and how that was decaying and becoming a dinosaur. So, I've got family in the United States, and we've traveled quite extensively. And for many years, we've traveled to the US. And I've always noticed that the fiber optic infrastructure in the US was lagging quite far behind. And I couldn't really understand. But, after quite some time and doing a bit of research, it quickly became clear to me that, in the US, your copper infrastructure was pretty well installed. It's well maintained. And there wasn't really a major push to get fiber to the home because your infrastructure was pretty good and it was doing the job that it needed to do. But obviously, COVID happened and everybody was forced to work and learn from home. And I think this really highlighted the massive demand for high-speed broadband internet to the home. And that really highlighted the need in the US for broadband infrastructure. So, I've been doing it for so many years, and the US is just such a big economy. So I just saw a really big opportunity. And that's kind of what drew me to the US, is to replicate my current business model, which I've been running in quite successfully in South Africa and still am today. But just to really replicate that model in the United States.
That's great. So for those who are listening, we're going to be talking about revenue generating Wi-Fi today for your multifamily community. So Warren was talking a little bit about fiber cable. So Warren, what is, from a very high level, for those that aren't familiar, what is fiber cable and how is it differentiated?
Fiber optic cable is often referred to as a future-proof technology. So it really gives you, with fiber to the home, you've got access to unlimited bandwidth. Fiber optic cable also has a very long lifespan. It has a life of up to 30 years. And the cable we install today would really be able to last for many, many years. Just with simply upgrading the active components, the equipment on either end, you could quite quickly increase bandwidth and capabilities, which you wouldn't be able to do with some of your other legacy technologies like Wi-Fi or copper. Copper and Wi-Fi are generally quite limited with bandwidth capabilities, whereas fiber optic cable itself, from a lifespan point of view, has got a very long lifespan, as well as bandwidth capabilities are practically unlimited.
So Wi-Fi and fiber cable are two different things?
Yep.
Fiber optic internet is different from Wi-Fi.
Yeah, so basically, they are two very different things. However, once you've got your fiber optic cable into your home, let's say you're running a one gig service into your home, you still need to run Wi-Fi throughout your apartment to connect all your mobile devices, like your mobile phones, your tablets, and so on. And that's where the 5G wireless comes in. But that's really your very, very last mile of connectivity. And you kind of want to limit that into each apartment. So you've got a device in your apartment where your fiber terminates, and then you've got Wi-Fi throughout your apartment.
Yeah. Warren, are you familiar with, I guess you would call them marketing agreements through, some of the big companies here in the U.S. like Spectrum?
Yeah, I am quite familiar. Those are very limited in their, from what I've seen, in their revenue share. I think typically the model that I've come across quite frequently is you've mentioned Spectrum. So basically what they typically do is they will charge a home, a developer, a sort of a flat fee per door. So they will then pass the responsibility onto the property owner to do the billing to the customer and the first line of support to the customer. So Spectrum provides a service to the property owner, and that's based on a per door business model. Whether the customer takes the service or not, the property owner is still responsible to pay that monthly service fee over to Spectrum. But one thing that does do is it allows the property owner to mark up the services quite high. So they've got the power and the ability to mark up the services. Whereas with our service, we kind of take all of those responsibilities and those burdens off the plate of the property owner, because they're ultimately not an ISP. And it is, it does take quite a lot of maintenance, and support, to support the customers' internet services.
Right.
So,
okay. Yeah. That's kind of where I was leading. I wanted to try to get a basic understanding of like a marketing agreement with Spectrum with a markup, versus, actually retrofitting or installing in a new development, fiber optic cable, and maybe what might be the differences of the two.
Yeah. So Spectrum will really charge the property owner a flat fee per door, and then they can mark it up. Whereas our services, we will do the billing. We will take care of the customer. So we retrofit our fiber optic infrastructure onto the building, or into the building, and provide a service to the customers. We do all the billing. We do all the customer support. And then we give a revenue share of up to 25% of what we bill the customer to the property owner.
Okay. So this is important. I think this is very different. Many, I think at this point, although I feel like it was new in the past couple of years, in 2019, I first heard about fiber optic cable. So I think a couple of companies have, through marketing efforts, people are aware of fiber optic infrastructure. But that being said, their typical model is, it's about call it depending on the size of the property, maybe $1,000 to $1,500 a unit to install. So you have to budget that capital up front whenever you acquire a property. It's hard to obviously pull from cash flow or get that capital after you acquire the property. And I think this is really why I wanted to have the discussion today for those who already own properties but are interested in boosting their NOI through implementing revenue generating I call it Wi-Fi, but through fiber optic infrastructure. And you don't need to have that capital up front. So Warren and his company Conduct Connect, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Warren, you will you will do the install, you will cover the cost, and from there it's just a straight revenue share with the ownership. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. So what we do is we'll obviously go in and do the retrofit and the installation at zero cost to the property owner. So that really frees up, as you've said, frees up some cash flow. And I think for a property owner that has owned a property for a number of years and is looking maybe to enhance that property, this is a really good opportunity to enhance the property by providing fiber optic services for their residents.
So, Warren, I guess, how are you structuring this? You talked a little bit about a revenue share. How are you structuring that with owners? And maybe we talk through the costs, like what are the costs to the residents on a monthly basis? And then what are the typical splits with the ownership group?
Yeah, so we basically got 3 packages that we provide to customers. We've kept it pretty simple. We've got a 200 meg service, 500 meg service, and a 1 gig service. All these services are fully synchronous. That means it's the same download speed and same upload speed. And all our packages are uncapped, so it's unlimited data. So our 200 meg package will go for $55 a month. Our 500 meg package will go for $75, and our 1 gig service will go for $95. So our typical customer, or our average across the board, is they typically settle on the $75 package. So that's where sort of, I would say, the majority of our customers land. So if you look at an average income, it averages out at about $75 per customer, per property. And that would obviously equate to roughly $18.75 per customer, which we then pay to the property owner. So that's, I mean, if you run the numbers, that could add $1,300 roughly per month worth of additional revenue. I think over $15,000 of additional NOI per annum, and then ultimately the value add for a property owner would be in the region of about $286,000. So it's that's pretty much the run through.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think the guy that connected us told me on his property, which is a Class C property in Irving, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe you know, maybe you don't know, but I think he was surprised when rolling out the implementation that many of the residents, workforce residents were taking, the $75 and you said the $95, right? The 1 gig. They were taking the higher level packages, which I don't think he necessarily expected. Do you know if that's the case?
Absolutely. That was quite a big shock. I mean, people are really going for these top packages. I mean, we were obviously, when we were doing our budgets and our forecasts, we were saying, okay, well, we could comfortably say an average of a 70% uptake, especially when you're going into an existing property where there are legacy providers. So let's say Spectrum or AT&T already providing service, but their service is a copper service. So we will go and build over that infrastructure, providing fiber optics, because we're pretty confident that fiber will win the race as far as the preferred method of connectivity. But yeah, we were super shocked to find that in a Class C type development, that customers are settling on the $75 and $95 packages. It was a big shock.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about the retrofit or the construction, and specifically for, most of the properties that we broker are going to be value add projects, so existing multifamily. And so if you're an owner of a Class B or C multifamily property and you're, 95% occupied, talk a little bit about, is it real invasive? What's the timeline for, construction to be completed, not actually like implementation? And then I guess I would be interested in actually how long, it takes to kind of roll out and get penetration across, call it 100 unit community or something like that. And, I think the multifamily sector is relatively new in the past year or two for you, where it's been mostly on the single family side. So I don't know what kind of data or information you have, but anyway, so just construction and then into actual implementation and penetration across the resident base.
Okay, so if we're going to look at a typical development, let's say it's about 100 apartments, your typical garden style multifamily residential development. okay, firstly, I can say that no two projects are ever the same. So, I mean, just to be on the cautious side, I would say that build out could typically take, I would say worst case scenario, from start to finish, from planning and design to getting materials and completion, turn on, activation, is roughly about 3 months. So a lot of our infrastructure is buried in the ground. So there is a bit of digging that goes on, but we're pretty well dialed in. The guys are used to working in these type of garden style developments. It is tricky working around the residents, but ultimately, we're pretty well oiled as far as that's concerned. So the teams are pretty good at working around residents. We do use quite non-invasive installation methods, which would limit the amount of trenching or digging. So we're not making too much of a mess when we are working. But we typically our reinstatement is pretty good. So we'll always make sure that the reinstatement is up to standard. We work closely with property management and property maintenance to ensure that whatever we're doing on the property is acceptable from an aesthetic point of view, to make sure that we are meeting all the health and safety issues. But I mean, it is a little bit of pain for, I guess, a lot of benefit for everybody at the end of the day.
And then what about penetration? Just how long does it take to get adoption from the residents?
Yeah, so we can look at an average of from month 1 to month 12. You could look at roughly about a 70 to 75% uptake. That's pretty much our sweet spot, and it will take roughly a year. And the reason for that is, in some cases, a lot of the customers have signed for packages which are under contract. So normally we have to wait for these customers to break contract before they can move services over to fiber optic. But our pricing is extremely competitive, and and I mean, fiber is the preferred technology. So we ultimately do get a large, the vast majority of customers on a property.
Yeah. For the multifamily owners out there, I just want everyone to know that I remember one of my clients making a decision on revenue generating Wi-Fi. They explored a couple of different fiber optic companies similar to kind of connectivity, but there's risk associated because many of them want an upfront cost. So you have to charge the residents. I guess maybe you make the determination on what you bill the residents, but regardless of whether there's penetration or not, you're going to have to pay $30 per month across all units at your property. Or, I think that specific client went with a vendor that was, $8 per month, and they viewed that cost as lower risk since it was $8 versus, plus or minus $30. But in this case, Conduct Connect is taking all the risk. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean so this is a very long-term investment for us. The fiber optic infrastructure itself has a lot of value, and it is a valuable asset to own, but it's definitely not a short-term payback. It's a pretty long payback because installing fiber optic infrastructure is pretty expensive.
Yeah. Warren, I know you call Florida and Tampa, Florida your home now. Where do you operate? I mean, like if someone had a property in Phoenix, Arizona, does your team have the capability to conduct install, or Columbus, Ohio, or so on and so forth?
Yeah, so our head office is based in Plano, Texas. I called Florida my home because I needed to replicate a similar lifestyle to what I had back in South Africa. So that's pretty much what sort of drew me to Tampa. But our head office is based in Texas, in Plano, Texas. And, we currently got a number of projects across a few states. We've got some work out in Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio. We've got some projects in Atlanta, Georgia. And then Texas, obviously, we've got the bulk of our projects are all in Texas, all the way from El Paso to Longview, which is, on the east, El Paso to the west. We go as far north as Wichita Falls. So we do have the capabilities to mobilize our team just about anywhere at this stage. Yeah, we've got an amazing platform that allows us to tap into a lot of technical resources. That is a national database which allows us to really go just about anywhere.
Yeah, that's awesome. And for those who don't know, I am from Florida, and Warren right now is in Cape Town, South Africa. And he showed me, before we started here, he showed me a beautiful view of the beach. It's a beautiful country. So he made me just a little bit jealous. But Warren, I was going to ask you, all right, so you install fiber cable. What about the sale of a property? And 3 years from now, after the installation, you got the revenue pumping, 95% of the tenants are on the network. What does it then look like for a sale? How does it affect new ownership? Is it easy to transfer to the new owner?
Yeah, it's pretty easy. We've already been through that process once before. So it's a pretty easy process. The fiber optic infrastructure is treated almost as a utility, and it is registered at the title, on the title. So it's easily transferable over to the new owners. And as I'd mentioned before, it adds obviously huge value, and in our example of 100 units, can add as much as 200,000 of additional value on the sale, of that property.
Okay. What about just technology changes? I know, 4G to 5G, and as all these things change, does that affect anything? Is there at any time? Is there any kind of recurring expense from a maintenance perspective or technology upgrade perspective?
Yeah, technology is always and constantly evolving. So as I'd mentioned, the fiber optic cable and infrastructure that we install today will really last a very long time. What really changes is the active equipment on either end. So you've got a router that you install in your apartment, and that, let's say today, has Wi-Fi 6 capabilities, and can do up to 500, or even up to a gig if you've got a Nest type mesh wireless network throughout your home. But that's easily upgradable. So it's all your active components that sit inside the apartment, and it's not really a big cost. So your total cost of ownership of a fiber optic network, although your initial upfront cost to install fiber infrastructure is more expensive than wireless or copper, your total cost of ownership over a 10-year period on fiber is a lot cheaper than any of your other legacy infrastructures like wireless or copper. So it doesn't require a lot of capital over a lengthy period of time. But yeah, it's pretty easily scalable and upgradable, because it's just really your active components that would need to change to keep up with all your latest trends in the technology.
Okay, good to know. All right, well, Warren, hey, thanks so much for joining us today. I guess if the listeners want to reach out and learn more, and how does that work? I guess there's not like a bid process because you're covering the cost, but if they just want to reach out and learn more, what's a good way for them to connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have a website, www.conductconnect.com. So any property owners looking to get infrastructure installed, welcome to visit our website and drop us a email or a message. But I think maybe if there's some additional benefits that fiber has or offers a property, is its stickability, because it attracts people, because you're now able to provide fiber optic internet. It attracts residents, so it can help property owners achieve a higher occupancy, but it also helps with retention. So you can retain people for a lot longer, so you've got less churn. So properties that have really good infrastructure tend to have a high occupancy and pretty good stickability.
Thanks for sharing that. Well, Warren, hey, thanks again for your time. Whenever you're back in the States, I know you're visiting some family right now, but whenever you're back in the States and you make it to Plano, please do reach out, and look forward to reconnecting.
Mark, thank you very much for your time, and thanks for setting this up. It's really appreciated.